What is the best description of a healthy church? In my opinion, it's very simple. A good, Christ-like community of faith can be a lost and found place for everyone. Even though Christians did not invent the lost and found office, in the best case scenario, we are, as believers of Christ, a place and a space where everyone who ever was lost at one point can be found again. And we were so right from the very beginning. In the first reading assigned for this Sunday, we hear the story of Saul right after his conversion. I'm certain you all remember the famous scene as Saul was on his way to Damascus to persecute and arrest even more Christians. He fell off his horse, a donkey, or whatever other beast he was riding. And that moment, that encounter with the risen Christ transformed his life. It turned Saul 180 degrees. From being a fierce persecutor of Christians, Saul desired now to preach the good message, the good news of Jesus the Christ. And so he arrives back in Jerusalem, goes to the first community of believers, and says, "How do I join you? Is there a list I should sign? How can I become one of you? Any auditions?" To which the apostles and the first believers react with fear. The Acts of the Apostles say, when Saul arrived in Jerusalem, he tried to join the disciples, but they were all afraid of him, not believing that he was a disciple. So yes, actually, the first knee-jerk reaction of the first church was, hold on. How do we know that you truly changed? How do we know that this is not a plot to get us all arrested? Naturally, fear is the first response of the early church. But then the story continues, and we read that Barnabas took charge of him, meaning Saul, and brought him to the apostles and reported to them how he, Saul, had seen the Lord. Eventually, the early church, the followers of Christ, accept Saul as one of their own. Eventually, they give him a second chance. They allow him to prove himself that he truly is a changed man. And I'm thinking that perhaps Peter had a decisive role in that process of allowing Saul, soon to be called Paul, into the community of the first church. Because Peter himself also was such a lost and found case. Peter, you remember, very outspoken person, assured Jesus multiple times, the last time during the Last Supper, that he would never betray or abandon Jesus. And yet, not many hours later, when Jesus is arrested and scourged and led to the crucifixion, Peter himself denies that he even knows this man from Galilee. And then he is absent while his master is crucified on Golgotha. So Peter knew firsthand what it means to make a mistake. Peter had a first-hand experience of being lost, and yet he comes to his senses and becomes the leader of the community of faith in Jerusalem. Another person that was lost is Judas. Not much different from Peter or Saul. Unlike Peter, he never denied knowing Jesus. He never denied being one of the apostles. Unlike Saul, he never persecuted Christians. He never caused death to a single believer in Jesus. All Judas did was betraying his master to the religious authorities of his day. Yes, Judas too lost his way, like Peter and like Saul. But unlike them, Judas did not make an effort to go back to the community. He perhaps was too prideful or too ashamed to go back to the other 11 apostles and say, guys, I messed up. I'm so sorry for what I did. Please, let me try again. And we know how unfortunate Judas's story ends. If you compare the story of Judas with Peter and Saul, later to be called Paul, we see one difference. Both Peter and Paul made an effort to be reconciled with the community. And thank God, they were welcomed with open arms, even if initially with hesitation. Eventually, they were forgiven and embraced and given a place at the table. Judas never made this journey back to his community. For whatever reason, he judged himself too harshly and chose to end his life rather than to face his demons. My friends, as I said at the very beginning, a healthy church, a church that is truly Christ-like, is a community of lost and found.